I wanted to share a little bit about a conversation I had earlier today with a friend who also was has connection to faith-based life, religious life. I won't mention what denomination or anything, but we were talking about how difficult and challenging it can be within the systems that we work with. And I think this goes beyond religion. I think our politics has very much been becoming as well, where questioning anything has become a bad thing. Like if you want to be part of a particular tribe, a particular religion, or any kind of community, I think for that matter, there are kind of parameters that are set for us, and anyone that questions that, or anyone that tries to reinterpret it, maybe in some ways, in religious life, that it would be very much about reinterpreting. It's considered anathema. Like you can't, you just can't do that kind of thing. You have to accept it for what it is, and that's it. There's no questioning. And I think how much all my years teaching theology, as much as it was about theology, it was about philosophy, was also about learning critical thinking, and how we seem to have lost the ability to think critically about different situations. We live in a very complex world, a world that has a lot going on in it, and we try to solve things very easily, and we try to solve them quickly. And the problems that we face as a country, as a world, are enormous in size, and they don't happen overnight. They don't come with quick answers, and often require a great sense of creativity, but also a sense of questioning. Like we have to be able to question in order to help move things forward, and in order to help not only ourselves grow, but people around us as well. And how that is frowned upon in these different institutions. You got to take it for what it is. You got to trust it. You got to believe it. It's a blind faith, especially in a religious sense, is very much a blind faith, without having the ability to really say, maybe there's something more. Maybe there's a different way of looking at something, and to begin to explore it in a different way. Well, what we do in coaching work is often we like the known. We like what we know. We like what we can see with our own eyes. And we often, and this was true for me when I began coaching several years ago as well, I had to in some sense, look at what my relationship with the unknown was, and what my relationship with the unknown is. Same person asked me today, like, how would I describe God? And God, for me, very much is about the unknown at this point. Because any time you try to put a known on it, you try to name it, you try to label it, you automatically begin to limit whatever that is. And we do that to God, we do that to ourselves, we do it to other people as well. And so the challenge is, can these two things, the known and the unknown, coexist at the same time? And can I explore whatever it is I'm exploring through that same lens? And I had dedicated my life to preaching about God in very different settings that I can't even begin to explain, often from high school kids to little kids to adults. And yet when I had removed myself from that life, I had a very hard time answering what my relationship with the unknown was. And I've told this story many times over again, that for me, I've learned much more about faith. I've learned much more about the unknown by leaving that life than I ever did while I was in it. I didn't have to, because everything was known, everything's determined, everything is set in place. And yet the real challenge in life is can I move beyond what I think I know? It's even what I think I know. It's not even necessarily what I know. Can I move beyond what I think I know and begin to explore this unknown element of my own life, of God, of other people? It helps enliven a sense of curiosity in ourselves. And that's often what is missing. And that is essential when it comes to the unknown. It's essential when it comes to being able to question things. I never stopped all my years teaching theology and philosophy, whether it was seminary setting or whether it was in community college when I did it there for a while. I never stopped anyone from questioning what I said, what they believed. Now, More often than not, I had an answer. More often than not, I can help navigate through that setting. But how important it was. And almost every student I've ever had, some I still hear from today, have said the same thing, how important it was to be able to question. And yet at the same time made it very difficult for them to go back often to the setting where they came, whether it was their high school that they were attending and came to class while I was teaching, because that gift, that skill has often been lost in our education system. And if our education system isn't about learning how to critically think, I'm not sure what the intent is. If it's still simply about regurgitating information, and here's what I know, so many of the humanities that are a part of our lives will become lost in the process, because we got to know. We have to have the fact. We have to be, it's got to be black and white. And our lives just aren't that way. And so I was reminded of that when I was having this conversation today with a friend over coffee, of just how much in the process of leaving that life for myself as well as for him, in many ways opened the door to question things like we hadn't questioned before, whether that's our own religious background, whether that's our understanding of even what the Bible says in many different passages, that there are so much of it is multi-layered. And I know someone who had to take classes in it as well. Like, you had to give back what was expected. And I think how much of a discrepancy that is from someone who also had to preach it day in and day out, because I just didn't know. And I think if we want to, in some ways, move forward in this world, and I think in some ways we have to find a way to move forward. We're never going to agree on everything. We just aren't. We know that as a fact. I've been around long enough to know that. But I think until we bring back a sense of curiosity, and that might mean just turning the television off or turning the internet off for yourself, and diving into what so much of these what seems like larger than life issues that we face, how they impact us, and how they're speaking to us from our heart. Because what we're looking for, we will not find with our heads. What we are looking for, we will not find with the logical mind. And we had made the point that art and poetry and music and so many of those facets which get pushed aside so quickly is really where we often find the answers that we're looking for, because it takes us out of that logical space. It takes us out of that mind trying to control and own what it is that we're trying to get across and trying to understand. And so I'm mindful of keeping things like writing or even some artwork in my life in order to keep myself grounded from a deeper place, because like so many of you, I get lost in my head. I get stuck in my head, and it's sometimes really hard to get out of that space. And it's often through poetry has been a great avenue for me. Reading poetry and understanding poetry has been a big part of that for me over the years, to help me get out of my head and into my heart. And that's really what I think is missing more often than not. Another way of describing it is how do you bring the humanity back into humanity, which seems obvious. We have found ourselves connected in so many different ways and yet disconnected at the same time. Like, we've lost that ability. And I think with a sense of curiosity, with a sense of art, with a sense of critically thinking as well, because critical thinking goes beyond the mind, we could begin to at least break into some of these bigger problems. If we could like narrow it down in our own lives and look at it in our own lives, it becomes much easier to do it on the macro scale. And so maybe the question to think about is how has art, how has poetry, music been an avenue for you, whoever's listening out there, to help you get out of your head and to take you into a deeper place in your life. That's where the answers are. That's the real answers that we're looking for cannot be thought of logically. They can only be come from a deeper knowing within ourselves, and it will require of us to recognize it's not always about what we know. It's also about this unknown that's trying to pull us into that sense of creativity, into the deeper parts of who we are.